Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure if I need the microphone. The school teacher voice in me always wants to speak loudly anyway. But thank you all for taking time out. Beautiful August 1st. Again, put the phones away today and drive safely. But also kind of a transition period. We're getting into high summer here. We start to see crops coming in. We were just discussing when you come from Mankato, you have a little different perception. But the beauty of Minnesota is the richness of our land and the richness of our agricultural tradition. John and Karen, to the folks up here and your folks, I think you told me 1879, family's been on a piece of land. That is not just a business. That is what's called the deep roots into the land. That is what ties us to who we are as a state. It ties us to who we are as communities and as neighbors. So we're just really grateful to come out. The setting is idyllic, I think, for most of you would agree. I was just mentioning whenever you see a field in late August, you can almost smell when you see a picture of it what it's going to be like, so to be out here. You're going to hear a lot of people get mentioned and talked about. I'll highlight a few of those, but I want to just note the collaboration that it takes to come here and highlight something that is not a false choice. The ability of this state to feed the world is well known. It's not just be able to produce food for ourselves. The Green Revolution truly got started in Minnesota. The innovation that folks are able to do that allows us to have the most abundant, the safest, the most nutritious, and the most affordable food supply in the world extends way beyond our borders. And the capacity to be able to do that in a sustainable manner, understanding that the richest thing that we have, and the one thing we do not want to export, is our soil and that richness that we have. So soil health, how we view water quality, and how we view the long-term sustainability, because it's pretty obvious with this family that there are going to be generations beyond 1879, 1979, 2079. That's the type of thing that Minnesota's always done. So the Minnesota Ag Water Quality Program, and hearing a little bit about this, it's fitting that we're here. This is the 500,000th acre that has been put into this program, and I'm going to clap for the folks here. This took vision. It took listening to the people who are going to implement it. It was the belief that we could continue to feed the world, we could continue to fuel the world and clothe the world. At the same time, we use modern practices and best practices and collaboration together to make sure that we're keeping the soil where it needs to be, and we're keeping the products that we grow with on those fields and not in our rivers. And this was a program that said that can be done in a voluntary manner, it can be done with support and education, and it can be done, first of all, respecting those farmers and respecting that tradition of understanding. This farm and those across Minnesota want nothing more than to have the highest quality product and the highest quality air and water quality. And so celebrating today and being able to highlight this in all the work, I feel grateful to be here. I was in the beginning with some of the folks involved who aren't here anymore, Matt Woolman being one of them. When the genesis of that idea started coming out, I was serving on the Ag Committee in the United States House. And it's some of the lessons learned from this that we took to the House, and we started viewing things like conservation compliance through the lens of partnership rather than the lens of regulatory framework alone. That the idea that we're going to put a framework out there and then enforce it without realizing or without thinking about the partnerships that want to get to the same goal. So this was a Minnesota idea. This is a unique pilot program that I think is a model for so much more that we can do, and it made its way into the Farm Bill in terms of conservation compliance and some of the water quality pieces. And so congratulations to everybody, certainly individual landowners, John, you and your family, but it takes a lot of leadership, both public and private. We've got a couple of those leaders here. Representative Nelson, you're, I hope, not too far from here. We drug you along. I think you're pretty close. So, and then, and my dear friend and someone I have had the pleasure to know for many years, the chair of the Ag Committee in the Minnesota House, Gene Poppy, is up here from the great city of Austin. And this collaboration to be able to get right, I will give an unabashed plug to the legislature this year. Rural issues and ag issues were a top priority, no small piece because of the folks who are attached to the land and because of the voice that Representative Poppy and Representative Nelson can bring to these issues. So congratulations for that, and it's encouraging for me to see you here. That work never ends, and we're glad you're here. But with that, I feel blessed, and I will tell you this, when people ask, Minnesota's state government is out there to support our citizens, to make sure we keep them safe on the roads, to make sure we educate our children, to make sure our food's safe, and to make sure our economy is creating an environment where businesses can thrive and grow. That is 24 agencies. They've got about 40,000 employees. It's a $50 billion budget. It takes leadership, and it takes citizens stepping up and putting themselves in the line of fire at times to say, yeah, I'll be out there and I'll be a part of that. So when Tom Peterson was the first person I thought of and the first person I called to ask under our administration if he would lead the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, it wasn't out of lack of knowledge. Tom knew what this job involved. He knew it would be a hard one, and he knew there would be other ways that he could have done, but I think he stepped up for Minnesota and he said he would do it. And I think that idea of having someone attached to the land, having many in this group here, having a neighbor that's there to help make those decisions, to help lead us, is something that should give you great comfort. I know for me, I could not be prouder than to have Tom Peterson as our Department of Ag Commissioner. Tom?
Thanks, well, thanks, Governor, and it is really good to have the Governor here in Pine County, you know, and my family settled, 10 minutes from here, 100 years ago, and my great-great-grandparents, and so it is really always close to me, or this whole area, and so just visiting, and so it is a real honor to have the Governor here today, and what a honor to have John. John and I have become friends, and looking at the things, the unique things that John's doing on his farm is very exciting. And so this program in particular, I was in the room, my previous job, I worked for Farmers Union, and I was in the room in 2012 when the previous Governor Dayton and the EP Administrator Lisa Jackson and Secretary Vilsack announced the Memorandum of Understanding for this program. And kind of saying, yep, sounds good, we'll see where it ends up, and just like a lot of other programs and that we all work on, and then to see it kind of move along, and to be honest, as the Governor said, it started as a pilot, and we had a lot of growing pains, and and I was a supporter of it in our work at Farmers Union. Peter Ripka's here. Peter's on the committee too that helps oversee it at Farmers Union, and there were some naysayers, and we'd say, oh, there's 2 farms in the program, there's 4 farms in the program, there's 10 farms in the program, and we're spending how much money on it, and and it was really interesting, and then pretty soon, oh, we had 20 farms in the program, and we're doing these practices, and farmers would say it's too tough to get into, and it didn't work for me, but we kept going, because the idea was right, that we had to, people were interested in our soil. We're interested in doing things a little different. We're interested in our nutrients and our water and everything that we're doing, and so we kept working on the program, and our staff kept doing outreach and working with our ag groups. And lo and behold, we kept growing to the point we're at 500,000 acres. And I just have to say a couple of things about it real quick, is that as a commissioner, we belong to like a commissioners association. Ours is called NASDA. And it's really interesting, as I've kind of gotten into this and talking to other commissioners, they'll ask about this program. They'll say, don't you have some kind of program in your state where your farmers get certified, or, it's kind of interesting, and that's very proud. The other thing that's kind of cool, and Brad Redlin, who runs ours, Brad, helps run our program, we get from Brad's department every week. I get a weekly update, and it's one of the best emails I get because it says what the numbers are. And they're jumping. I mean, they jump every week significantly. So this program, even though we were at 500,000 acres, but we're jumping fast. I think the press release today said 520,000 almost. So that just shows by the end of June to this, like, we're really encroaching. And I just say too, it's all types of farms. Like, we're in Pine County here where we have very diverse farms, and this program hits that. It's very open. We have great people like Ryan that'll help farmers and move through that. And so I just want to welcome everybody here today and say that we continue to work on this, and glad to have my family here today. Glad to have the representatives, Adam from the corn growers. And the other thing I'd just like to highlight is our partners in this. This was a memorandum of understanding, as I said in the beginning. So we have our FSA partner is here. Commissioner Kessler from the PCA, Commissioner Naramore from the DNR is very important. And I'm going to turn it over to our partner, Troy Daniel, with the NRCS. And so let's welcome Troy Daniel.
I may need an interpreter here. I told the governor I've only been here a year, so lighten up a little bit. I'll learn to talk Minnesotan pretty soon. But I tell you what, it was a privilege not only to come to Minnesota to be the state conservationist, but to come to a progressive state that is ahead and on the edge and the cutting edge with conservation. This project, like Tom said, was kind of a vision in 2012. In 2013, it kind of escalated, and then we had our regional conservation partnership program that MDA was able to tap into NRCS funding, USDA funding, to really accelerate $9 million. That's a big hit. That's good for conservation. But that funding helped incentivize producers to get eligible for certification, and it helped them install practices that are needed to get certified. But I don't want to forget the technical assistance, because without technical assistance, most of our farmers wouldn't get there. I mean, they don't have time to look up every little detail of every little regulation out there or every little thing that University of Minnesota comes out with, nutrient management and things like that. I see Adam nodding because we know what we're talking about. It's a very complex world we live in. So I think it's critical to have conservation technical assistance through our partnerships with Bowser, the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, and our NRCS staff and MDA staff. They make it happen. They walk through the process with producers, and they help them get certified and then maintain that certification, and I think that's critical. I love the RCPP program. I've been talking already with Tom and Brad about how do we move it forward from now on, because I think it's a good outfit. It's a good fit for what we're doing here with certainty. So when I think of this project, this program, and these 500,000 acres, I look forward to 1 million acres. Maybe we can be here a year later. But for a producer, a farmer like John, to have certainty from regulatory hits, but also for the public to have environmental certainty so that they know that the water that leaves the field is cleaner than it was 10 years ago, and hopefully will be cleaner further and further down the road. I think that's a certainty that we all should appreciate. And I do like that Minnesota has a chance to lead. I think we can lead the nation, actually. We're innovators, and it shows every day. So I look forward to a future, a brighter future. I'm anxious to start talking about additionality with wildlife habitat, soil health, things of that nature, maybe air quality and energy someday. So I think it's a good thing, but I want to end with thanking, number one, the farmers. Farmers make it happen. Agencies don't make it happen. Government never makes it happen. I shouldn't say that, Governor Walz, but the reality is it's people every day working the land, managing the property. That's what makes it happen, and they have to make sure their bottom line is stable and also make sure that we have good land and good water resources for the next 1,000 generations. So appreciate you letting me be here today. We have Raleigh here from SWCD.
This will be relatively quick. I'm Roland Cleveland. Was a dairy farmer just about 15 miles south of here at North Branch, and I've been on a Soil and Water Conservation District Board for 32 years now, and I have the honor of serving as president of our state association. And this just shows what a true collaboration, how things are supposed to work out there. You know, Department of Health, Department of Ag, Bowser, the SWCDs, and it's the farmer that does it, but the SWCDs are there to help them with the technical side, to get them the experience. We're the ones that, normally it's a technician or somebody in the SWCD office comes out and works with the farmer, finds out they're interested, tells them what they need to do, provide the technical assistance to get it done. We're the boots on the ground to get things done out there in the world. And just like to thank all the partners. This shows what a true collaboration works, you know, how things are supposed to work out there. With that, that's all I have.
John Jaski. I'm with the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and I was involved in the beginnings of this. And as the commissioner noted, you got to start things slowly, and you got to do them well. And if you do that at the beginning, sometimes it actually works out pretty well too. And this is a perfect example of that. So, welcome to a beautiful haymaking day, huh? I mean, get any better than this? Commissioner talked about the farming part of it, and I was a youth on the farm too. We didn't think so much about government programs. We just thought about getting the job done. And, private landscapes in Minnesota are what really tie into how we're going to see our water quality go one way or the other, whether it's a lake shore or a city lot or a farm. Conservation on all those places is going to be critical. And I would say, farmers been doing it longer than most, right? I mean, maybe since 1879, was that the year this place got going? I mean, that's amazing to see the Stevenses be able to carry that forward. But, in a big way, Troy just talked about some of the conservation efforts that have been around since probably the 1940s, and farmers have been scaling up, ever since. I think we got 500,000 acres, which is, in my mind, a lot closer to the start of something than to the end of something, whether it's a million or you can pick a number. But this shows that people are willing to do things in a voluntary way if they're given some little bit of help, the technical help or the financial help it takes to get some of these things started and keep them going. That's really, really critical. I think the other part of it is, yes, they get something out of it, I guess as a farmer you get the recognition if you care about that. Some farmers really don't care about that one bit. They may care more about assurance or just knowing for themselves that they did something that is good enough. Knowing that you did something that's good enough is really also a very helpful benchmark, and this program provides that. So, again, I think we're closer to the beginning than the end, maybe a lot closer to the beginning than the end, hopefully, and over the next decade or two, however many it takes, we'll keep growing this thing, and farmers will be recognized, and we contribute their part of what we see for water quality as needed in Minnesota. So thank you.
Now, if we could hear from John a little bit.
Yeah, thank you guys. This is pretty awesome for all you folks out here. Thank you very much for coming. I 7 years ago, Dad and I were at that hill back there, and we're looking at the washouts. And who would have thought of trying to figure out how to stop a washout? We'd have the governor and the commissioner 7 years later, and having a conversation with the bank of you can't do it conventionally anymore. You better figure something out. And here we are today, and it just kind of snowballed. We laughed. I don't know what year it was, Dad or Mom. We used to tube down this waterway after them rains. And now, if it wasn't for the neighbor's water coming onto our farm, I would plow this ditch shut, and any water coming down this ditch, other than the mosquitoes and bugs, you drink it. But yeah, it's been a kind of a fun transition getting here, and it just kind of snowballed. I don't know. Just a simple fix and erosion, and now we've got our own soybean seed in West Rock. We're going back old. What's old is new again, and it's fun with the older farmers and Dad's generation and them. So we got rye here, and you talk to the older farmers and be like, I think I'm going to bring rye back, and to try and help with the rotation, maybe help with some weed control, and they all laugh like, well, duh, that's how we did it. And you talk to a young person, your generation, you talk to a young person or Ryan, and they're like, well, why would you do that? Just buy more chemical. And so yeah, it's running away from me. I don't know what we're doing, but just a quick tour of the farm, what we got going on. September 10th, we'll have a show here. So behind the barn, where the combine is a rye field. So we got a comparison of rye as grain, as straw, and then a hay crop behind it compared to regular beans. And then we have beans planted into the rye to see if the rye can control the weeds good enough, so we didn't have to use chemicals. And looking at the water hemp and lamb's quarter that is embarrassingly out there in the straight soybeans, and that is not there, no chemical yet in the rye, clean, so clean. I just like, okay, well, that's the future of beans for us. We'll never have a regular soybean field again. The cornfield behind you was pasture, cover crops, and grazing last year. So there's gaps in the corn, and that's because we got different rates of nitrogen to see like in conventional corn, we know you need 100% to grow 100% of your crop. So what we got on that field is do we now bump that down? Is 25% our new cash flow and all that kind of stuff? And then we no longer speak in yield at the at the coffee shop. I told Dad and Mom, if anybody ever asks you about yield, you just tell them it cash flowed well or it didn't cash flow, because yield is irrelevant. And so, so that's a cash flow. Across the road in the soybeans, it looks like a normal no-till soybean field, but there's a population study out there. So if it's down to 55,000 planted, normal in our neighborhood would be about 160. We've been 2 years, this is our second year, 110, so that's less inoculant per acre cost, less seed cost per acre. We're a yield limited environment, and so I found it funny that we always had to push that seed cost and fertilizer cost to grow the same yields. And then that little soybean field there is a high production soybean plot. It's an acre and a half. I have no idea what you can do to soybeans to make them yield more. I just said yield doesn't matter, but just for fun of it, if we kitchen sink soybeans, manage it like corn, what will happen? That was just kind of a show plot for the conventional neighbors. There is 15-inch corn in that field as well. We put a couple strips of 15-inch corn. This field, it looks like normal alfalfa, but alfalfa is a fantastic soil health. Marisol from the UND and a couple folks from, just her and my folks just absolutely love alfalfa, but her as a soil scientist they can't speak enough. And so the local NRCS offices were out here a couple of years ago doing a soil health check, and they kept pouring the water into their little tester, and the gal started giggling, and about 10 feet over, the water came back out of the ground. So there was just such poor soil structure that the water just ran horizontal and bubbled back up instead of percolating in. So we're in an area that we get 30 inches of rain in the summer, and 1 week of dryness, and we're just like, oh no, we need rain. And I toured farms in North Dakota, and they got 15 inches for the year, and they had this corn that was just, I just standing like, what? And they're like, yeah, what kind of yield? Well, we were looking for about 180 bushel. On 15 inches of corn, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed to tell you that we had 15 inches in April and May before I came out here. It was just crazy. And then the corn behind it, so the alfalfa is just a soil health amendment to bring back life in the soil, big roots to fracture it. The corn back there, we tried some 60-inch corn. So we shut off every other row, and then we'll fill that gap up with cover crops to produce nitrogen for next year's corn. So next year we'll move over 30 inches, and then have the cows graze it. So then we'll have a banker understands animal credit units. For every day that you have a number of cattle over so many acres for so many days without having to haul bales, the banker knows that that's an animal credit unit. And so, one, can we reduce our inputs of the corn crop, but two, can we get more crops per acre? And so with the 60-inch, the goal there is almost a self-sustaining corn system, so to speak. I'm working with the university. We're trying to get Kura clover on that 20-acre field. And Kura clover is a legume that spreads by rhizome, like your lawn. If you ever tried to kill your lawn, you don't really succeed at it, and that is the nice thing of Kura clover. So that will be a forever field of hay, nitrogen. So the goal there, once it's established, would be a hay cutting in the spring, corn, and a hay cutting in the fall. I mean, this is just too fun. I've been saying, make farming great again. I've been saying that because it's such a stress. I mean, 2009, you guys, look at the spring, the work you guys did. One, kudos to you guys for them dairies that went down and the emergency funding that the capital pushed through. That was pretty cool that stuff got that fast to help them farmers out. But there is so much stress in farming. I mean, one of the highest suicide rate businesses there is. I mean, that's serious. That's serious. And so with the soil health and make farming great again, it's trying to bring joy back to farming. you know.
And then you usually say you do graze your cover crops or your fields too then as well and stuff.
Yeah, yep. So that whole 90 acre will,
It's important too, or just so you have cattle worked into the feeds too. As
the
well.
cows really brought this all together. So with we're in East Central Minnesota. We need to farm like not the rest of Minnesota. The rest of Minnesota can farm at 120% inputs because their odds of losing the crop are so little. Our odds of losing a crop are pretty good over here. So we go in, but with the cows, one, they got hooves. They can spread their own manure. They can fetch their own feed. We don't need to tend them anymore like we used to, and bring the natural beast back, so to speak. So right now they're spoiled on the lot while we're trying to get everything set up. So every time you walk in the yard, they're like dogs. They stand there and bark because they want their treat. They're spoiled. But we cannot fail here. If I try an experiment with the corn or the soybeans and something like I did oats and beans last year, and as a row cropper, it's a failure because I couldn't get the beans out. Both crops turned out very well, but I couldn't get it. We have cattle. We made cattle feed. If I fail on the corn, I make feed. There's still 15 tons to the acre there. You cannot fail with cattle. And I met a guy from Iowa who says, well, I don't understand in your area why you guys, how anybody thinks they can row crop up there without some sort of cattle on their farm. And part of me was kind of offended, like, hey, that's my area you're talking about. And the other part was like, finally, somebody from out of our area gets it. And I mean, where Nelson, you live, I mean, that's the end of corn production. You go 15 miles north of here, and that's it. Corn is meant for grazing, not for row crop. That's where we live. And this soil health thing has given us a competitive advantage.
Smart.
Like I said, to fix a washout in a hill, we're growing all this plus our own seed stocks, and it just, yeah, now it's fun. I still worry every night, but
I don't know about you. I feel like I should pay tuition after that. That's one thing. Or I certainly hope this is going on the YouTube channel. This is better than I tipped the hay wagon, by the way. So this will be a good one. But well, I can't tell you all how appreciative we are. And you just heard John talk about that is the passion there. And I said you hear that joy, the sense of we have to make it so we get folks back on the land. There's a lot of intersection of things happening here. Some of the things that were done in the Capitol in response to disasters, but beginning farmer and rancher legislation, way to maybe entice young folks to get on the land. And these practices that are time-tested and true, we need to make sure that we're not de-incentivizing people to make these good choices, but we're working just the opposite. With the technical advice you have here, you're getting back and forth of sharing best practices. We have our commodity groups here, corn, soybean, others. Those are how we get this done right, and that's how we make sure that Minnesota has the opportunity, again, to make a living and choose to live a high quality of life by living right in Pine City, living on farms since 1879. But we also have a responsibility to feed the world and to continue to innovate while we protect that soil health. It's so great to me, and I can tell you, I was just mentioning earlier in Congress, the soil health thing over the last 6-8 years has just become the mantra everybody talks about. My dear friend Frank Lucas was a former chair from Oklahoma. Frank was the chair of the House Ag Committee before Colin was in there. Frank is a disciple. I mean, you two should get together, because that would be a YouTube we would watch, because talking about what we're doing at our land-grant university, at the University of Minnesota, what they're doing at Oklahoma State, those are things that just make sense. So I want to applaud everybody who made this happen. This took a vision. The water quality program was certainly one piece of it, and why we are, again, we're celebrating John, and you're out here. I really appreciate the comment that I certainly hope the 500,000 acres is a lot closer to the beginning than the end. But we're here celebrating Minnesota, celebrating innovation, and celebrating collaboration. So, John, thank you for having us out here. Thank you for allowing us to share together on this. It's not about patting on the back. It's about celebrating successes and then moving on from there. And so, thank you all, Commissioner. We're really grateful.
Thank you, Governor.